The views expressed in this program do not reflect the views of the staff, the management, or the licensee of this station. This is 91.7 FM WHUS Stores. I am PedlinRon, and you are listening to Bicycle Talk, episode 435, to be broadcast Wednesday, March 26th, 2025 on WHUS 91.7 FM and WHUS.org. Welcome to Bicycle Talk without my friendly co-host, the lovely Fran Storch. If you are watching on Facebook Live, please feel free to comment, and I might be able to get back to you. Bicycle Talk is the show where we talk about bicycles, bicycle culture, bicycle advocacy, upcoming news in cycling, the bicycle business, and the bicycle calendar. If you have a comment or you'd like to contribute information to the show, and are listening on Facebook Live, you can, of course, leave your comments down here below, or you can just send me an email at bicycletalk1@gmail.com. You can also listen to past episodes of Bicycle Talk on WHUS.org, Spotify, iTunes, and now on my Bicycle Talk YouTube channel. Ron's Rant of the Week. The tubeless tire. I know. Yesterday, I always rant about this, but yesterday I was at the Natchaug Epic and I was finishing up with a kids ride and passed a couple that was riding into the finish, and the guy had not one, but two flat tires and was riding them on the rims. So lots of things wrong here, all right? First of all, two flat tires, still riding the bike. That's pretty wrong. Riding on the rims, that's pretty wrong. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but go up to them and go, "Tubeless tires by any chance?" And they looked at me and went, "Yep, tubeless tires." You know, it was a gravel ride. I'm sure there were some instances where it would have been really nice to have tubeless tires, but you know, just like in cyclocross, if you hit something hard enough, all it really requires is, like, you know, a baby head rock or a pothole or something, you know, a deep gouge, a sharp edge, anything at all. And you smack those tubeless tires hard enough, guess what? They just explode. Now, the good news was, of all these wrong things going on here, is that both tires were somewhat secured to the rims. They look pretty good. So it's not like he completely lost control of the bike when it happened, which tells me that it probably happened at a pretty low speed, because high-speed tubeless explosions usually are catastrophic and take you down pretty fast and pretty hard. Tend to happen a little bit more on the road than off the road. So I'm guessing that he wasn't going super fast when it happened. I didn't get any details. I was in charge of this kids ride and I really wanted to get back with the kids. We were almost to the finish line, so I didn't get a chance to really get any major details on it. But all I knew was he's riding on rims, not a good idea. He had two flat tires, not a good idea. And he rode a gravel ride on tubeless tires. Another bad idea. So anyway, I know I complain about this a lot on this show. I know a lot of you out there absolutely love and adore your tubeless tires. I get it. I totally get it. I understand when something's working really well for you, it's hard to change, but gotta hate those things. I don't think I'll ever ride them. You know, I probably should at some point, just to experience the difference, as everyone tells me. But I just got off of a site and just ordered a new set of tubular 33 millimeter tires, because I'm going to this is a problem too. I'm going to mention this. If anyone out there knows of a good 33 millimeter or somewhere around there, 28 to 33, even 28 is passable, tubular tire that is available, I'd love to know about it, because for some reason the folks in the boy, I'm having a hard time talking today. The tubular industry have only given wide tubulars to the cyclocross people, which is fine because they really work great. They're like really the way to go, no questions asked. Why are we not producing a tubular tire in a road tread? That's what I want to know, because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm really looking for, but I can't seem to find it anywhere, and I keep looking. If I do find it, I will let you know. Let's move on to the positive side. On my Bicycle Talk Facebook page, you will see a video that I copied and pasted over, and it's called "Ride the Best Tunnel in the World." You got to check out this video. It was put out there by a site called Not Just Bikes. Love these guys, really cool. And they break down how a Norwegian city of Bergen reclaimed an underused space and created a stress-free commute that doubles as a museum for public art, a popular underground park, and perhaps the single best place on earth to teach a kid how to ride a bike. And then they explore how this project integrates with the rest of the city's excellent transit system and how it stacks up with the North American approach. Forward thinking equals progress. Yeah, let's pay attention to the Norwegians. They seem to have it together. Seem to have figured it out. It's the coolest thing. Wait until you see the video. It's really cool. They have lights. They have different, you go through spring, winter, summer, and fall. I mean, it's all done with light projection. It's very cool. Definitely cool. So what we could do if we just put our minds and dollars to it. And think about that. If you've got a tunnel and you're using it as a bike lane, and it's well ventilated, obviously that's a key factor there, and it keeps the bikes completely off of the streets where there might be busy cars and truck traffic. What a brilliant idea. What an absolutely brilliant idea. Now, how many of those tunnels are out there? I don't know. I don't know anything about the old, subway systems and if there are abandoned tunnels anywhere or how that all works. But yet another thing to try to identify, maybe think about and look at. What a great way to get yourself across the city and not have to deal with cars or trucks. You wouldn't have to worry about them crossing over that nice barrier that's put up to make a lane safe. Kind of cool. Anyway, yeah, you're underground. Yeah, you're not in the sun. I get that part, but it's still pretty cool. And if it only requires you, if it takes out, let's say, like a 2 or 3 mile distance that would normally be intensely difficult to get through with a bicycle or with pedestrians, what a brilliant idea. Thought it was cool. Check it out. It's on my site. And last week I reported that more Americans rode bicycles than ever in 2024 and that youth participation saw the biggest surge. Well, 35% of those ages 3 and older rode a bike at least once in 2024. And yesterday I got to go out and ride my bike through 3 states in 10 miles with a bunch of kids. Cool, huh? Pretty cool. I really had a great time with it. The kids were super psyched because, some of the kids, their moms and dads were also doing the rides, the gravel rides. And there was one gravel ride that was over 80 miles. And they got to come back with bragging rights. We talked to them about this, of course, got to hype it up a little bit. And we got to say, you may have ridden 84 miles on your gravel bike, but I rode through 3 states. What did you do today? And it's just a fun thing. We're up in the very, very quietest of the quiet corner of Connecticut, and we were in Thompson, Connecticut. We started and finished at the Thompson Speedway, which is a car race park. And it's just a great place to put something like this on. It was really fun. And of course, it connects to some of the most pristine and not so pristine dirt roads in northeastern Connecticut. And it's kind of like a hidden gem up here because we have lots of quiet back roads, but there's also still left lots of dirt roads that are connecting some of these really quiet back roads. So cool event, very cool event. Big shout out to Richard Fries. Love you, Richard. And yes, I do love being part of the family. We were exchanging texts back and forth a little while ago. I now own the kids' ride because we had such a good time. And after the ride was over, we brought all the kids up on the stage because one of the little girls that was on the ride really wanted to start a bicycle club at her school. And she explained the whole thing to us, and I interviewed her on the stage, and it was just, I had everything I could do to keep from, I had to hide my smile for a while because it was just so cool to listen to this little girl who was just so intense on telling us about her bicycle club. And they ended up ordering jerseys, and the jerseys she wanted on her jersey. They asked her what she wanted, and she wanted she wanted an octopus that was riding a bike in space. The minds of kids are always fascinating, aren't they? So anyway, they made this jersey up, and it was called the Octocyclists, I think is what they called themselves. Dad has some connections and got apparently a tattoo artist that drew the whole thing up. He made the presentation, and the tattoo artist said, "Sure, I can do that, no problem." And that's where the artwork came from. And it was just really cool. It was just totally, totally cool. And so anyway, I got to ride with these kids. They were just having a blast. There were some challenges for some of them. I watched some very little legs going around very rapidly to get going on those bicycles. But we kept the whole group together the whole way. We stopped at the tri-state marker. There's actually a marker that connects the Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts all together in this one corner point. And we rode out to there. We took some pictures. I'll post a couple of pictures up. It'd be kind of fun. But anyway, it was all just fun, and we had a great time. Kids, love kids. Kids are our future. I even, Richard and I were texting back and forth, and he thanked me for doing what I did, which is fine. I mean, it's what I do. I love doing this kind of stuff. So anyway, I was trying to find the text here. So we were just chatting back and forth about it, and I have a comment in here that I thought was kind of interesting, if I can pull it up and make it happen. But riding with kids. If you don't ride with kids yet, you might want to consider it, even if it's just like your neighbors or somebody like that. Anybody that, maybe a family member, could be a nephew, a niece, could be a grandchild, whatever. You should ride with kids. Ride with kids. Kids, kids have a way of, there's two age groups that I find really interesting to ride my bike with and to be around when on a bicycle. One is kids, and one is people that have been on the earth longer than others, the experienced, as I like to call us, because you get a different perspective out of life in general. Kids see things from a kid's eye view, and it's so cool the way that they respond to that sort of thing. And it's just, again, ride with kids. It's kind of fun. I had a blast, and I guess, I can't seem to pull this up, so we'll maybe talk about it another time. But apparently I own that ride now, according to Richard. And we will continue to do it because it was just a huge hit. So lots of fun. Anyway, that's Natchaug Epic. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but great gravel ride here in the spring. I can't believe how many people showed up to it. It was not the best of weather. I mean, it was okay. It was, but it was just cold. We have average temperatures in this state for this time of year that generally tend to be in the anywhere from 43 to 53 degrees is the average for March, meaning that usually it starts out in the 43-degree range and ends in the 50s. And the day before this ride, we had oh, there he is right there. So we had a day that it was like 59 degrees out. It's gorgeous. The sun was out. It's beautiful. And the next day for the Natchaug Epic, the temperature dropped down seriously that night. I heard the wind come up and I went, oh boy, we're in trouble. And there was a strong northwest blow that came through, and it ended up being really chilly in the morning, like in the 20s. So we started out in the 20s, and it's it was a really chilly ride to start. Everybody had a lot of layers on. We made sure that we encouraged people, because I was part of the announcements there, to encourage people to wear lots of layers, and you can always shed them off and leave them at the rest stops, and then we'll carry them back for you if you want. So it was a good thing. It was a really good thing. I did find a text here, and Richard said, thank you again for coming out and bringing your energy and disposition to the event. What you do with the kids is profound. So, I just sent back, the kids are our future, and if they're excited about cycling, they will continue the legacies that both you and I are creating. I have faith in humanity, even though it's a bit messed up. I didn't say that at this time in this country right now. And then I asked him, also said, thanks for letting me be a part of everything you do, because Richard's just, he's the guy. He's the energy guy that's in Massachusetts. He's really the energy guy in New England. He's all over the place. He really is. He's just a whole lot of fun to be around. And he sent me back a text that said, you have a home with us. So that's cool. That's cool. I had fun. It was great. Good time for sure. And so we have clocked off yet another Natchaug Epic. Oh, by the way, in that cold weather in March, we had 600 people show up to go ride their bicycles on gravel roads in northeastern Connecticut. That's impressive. So anyway, that's enough of that. That's enough of the Natchaug Epic for now. Let's see here. We're going to go down here and take a little bit more look. What do we got? Yeah, here it was. Yeah, the normal temperatures are somewhere between 43 and 53 degrees. And a lot of times it's overcast. But, anyway, you get what you get. It's the weather. It's New England. Changes all the time. If you're expecting it to be one thing, please don't, because it just never turns out quite that way. That's just normal. Mechanical Minute and Ron's tips for the week. Here's a good one for you. There's a company called HiLine Components, and they have released a pocket-sized electric tire inflation pump. Okay? And it can reach 120 psi in 50 to 160 seconds, depending on tire size and preferred pressure. This nifty little device can fit in your pocket. It's tiny. It's USB rechargeable. Kind of cool. Man, I couldn't believe it. I can't mention prices on the show, but I can tell you it was not on the inexpensive side of bike pumps. As a matter of fact, I've got my good old Silca Pista Club pump, which has been around for almost as long as I've been around on the earth. And, it still works great. The other day, before I was getting ready to go to the gravel ride, I realized I needed to put some air on my tires. I went to check my Silca pump, and I pulled up the plunger and pushed it down. It went, poof, fell right down. It's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Of course, you take them apart and you get inside where the leather gasket is in the inside, and you can just take some nice fresh lithium grease and you can rub it around and kind of soften up the leather plunger, put it back together, and it works like brand new again. Yeah, I bought it a long time ago. It was far less than this particular device. But if you are in the know about these things, it's pretty close to what this device also is. Electronics versus good old manual pump that works great. Guess you know my opinion here. So, let's see. That's my good old Silica Pista pump. For the safety of riders, the World Tour mechanics are still choosing tubular tires over tubeless tires. Oh yeah, that tubeless tire conversation I was having earlier. Yeah, it's back. Inner tubes, tubular tires, and tubeless setups have all been on show, but a lot of the teams are still riding on tubular tires. Wonder why. Anyway, I don't have to wonder why. I completely understand. So anyway, it's yeah, Pete, Bicycle Talk is on now. Ron couldn't get his act together. He was very tired. He worked all day at a gravel grinder yesterday, and I just could not get myself motivated to turn the show on. So I'm here now. That's all. And we're recording this, so you can always go back and check it at another time. But anyway, yeah, I know. I'm way out. And hello to Mark, too, who's watching. Tire size matters. Yeah, I know. It's the beating of the dead horse files. That's me. If you think that fat bike tires were designed to provide a smoother ride on roads or pavement, you're absolutely right. The wider the tires reduce shocks and bumps, and while you're riding across cracks and pebbles, they also make it easier for the bike to handle. Not really anything that's rocket science here. If you think about the volume of air and how that's going to cushion your ride, and that, yeah, you might think you're getting more road friction, but you really aren't, because you're kind of riding on the very top of that rounded tire. They're faster. They're more comfortable. Boy, if you haven't made the transition yet and gone over to fat tires on your road bike, I plead with you to make that transition. You will be so surprised, and your body will be so much happier for what you're doing to it or not doing to it. Anyway, that's my mechanical tip and mechanical minute and tip for the week. That's what I got for today. I'm going to move on into the show, and we're going to talk about a few other things here. So there is a Congresswoman who is Linda Sanchez, and she has introduced legislation to close the de minimis loophole that allows duty-free importation packages valued at under $800. The president, our current president, I'll leave it at that, announced on February 4th that he had closed the loophole packages from China, Canada, and Mexico. But then 4 days later, he delayed that closure, because that's all he's been doing. It's just really driving us all nuts until the Secretary of Commerce determines the procedures are in place to handle the extra inspections. Sanchez's legislation would close the loophole on shipments from all countries, noted Pat Cunane, an industry veteran who has long lobbied for de minimis reform. I used to work for Pat Cunane many years ago. Long story. Fuji Bicycles. Long story. This is a clean, clear bill that provides enough time to do it right, Cunane told Brain. Brain is Bicycle Retail and Industry News, if you don't know that. I'm reading this from a Brain article. He said that closing the de minimis for shipments from Europe is of particular value to take to the bike industry. The bill would immediately end de minimis treatment for packages from China and phase out de minimis for all other countries after a 4-month transition period. And it would also direct the Treasury Secretary to oversee a rule-making process during the 4-month transition, and direct the Treasury Secretary to consult the Postmaster General to establish appropriate fees and entry procedures. So Sanchez is a Democrat from California. She serves on the House Committee of Ways and Means. She introduced the legislation at a news conference on Tuesday that Cunane attended. And the National Council of Textile Organizations and National Association of Police Organizations facing fentanyl and organization, and the United Steelworkers Union were also represented at the event. Closing the de minimis loophole is essential to protecting American manufacturers and shielding families from fentanyl and other dangerous products. Countries like China are exploiting this loophole to bypass our trade laws and ship harmful or low-quality goods directly to homes. By closing the loophole, we can level the playing field for American workers. We're not going to be able to make bike chains here, folks. You know what? Maybe we'll close the loophole, but guess what? We still can't make the stuff that they're making at the quality level they're making anywhere near the price they're making it. Enough said. There are some things you just have to rely on others to help you with, and that's okay. It really is. If we were to come back here to the United States and decide to make all of our cables and our cassettes and our chains here, because that's what I reported on last week, they would be 3 to 4 times the price at a minimum, and I can guarantee you the quality would not be anywhere near the level that we're able to get them from right now. This is all crazy talk. It's all just crazy talk. I don't understand it, and they really need to let some of these products come in. There's other things you can do to check products before they come into the United States. There's plenty of other methods available, but punishing our neighbors right next door to us and others for no apparent good reason is really not the way to make friends and influence people. Anyway, we're gonna crack this one closed and call it for what it is and move on. Just drives me nuts. So now we go on to, there's a Streets blog in here, and where did it go? It went away on me. Okay. So this is focused on lots of talk that we're dealing with right now, because there's so much change right now in the in federal funding that's coming into the states, and how are we going to deal with this and how are we going to deal with that? And there's a lot of issues here. There's a whole lot of issues, including issues for folks like me who are, not as young as they used to be and are on Social Security and other various things to keep my income going that I fed into for all the years that I worked. And so anyway, that's just a minor, but it's time for the State Department of Transportation to step up and do a better job. I agree with that, but it's also, we still need federal support to be able to keep the DOTs alive. So Department of Transportation is what DOT is, if you're not aware. And it's all about transportation. Bicycles are all about transportation. Pedestrians are all about transportation, not to mention the whole light rail thing, the buses, the planes, the trains, everything is transportation. There's even water transportation with boats. So there is transportation. We would like to keep it. We would like to improve it. And when you go back to that video that I mentioned that's on the Facebook page, you'll see cool ways that you can improve transportation. And it's just outrageously cool. So building a better state. How do we do it? So State Departments of Transportation, this came from a Streets blog article that was dated on March 24th, 2025 by Kia Wilson. She writes a lot of really cool stuff, like all the things she's covering. State Departments of Transportation must do more to make America's transportation system safe, equitable, and green, and especially given the current administration's attacks on the federal level, a new report argues. In the first update to its Innovate DOT framework in 10 years, the State Smart Transportation Initiative emphasized that DOTs are rapidly evolving from their historical role as the offices that built the interstate highway system to the modern one as expansive public agencies held responsible for managing complex multimodal transportation networks and land use decisions, as well as majority of our national transportation funds. Yeah, a lot of the Department of Transportation was developed a number of years ago to put in these the big the national highway system. Like we've got I-91 here, we've got I-84 here, and we've got I-95 here in this state. And we're just a little tiny state, but we have 3 interstates that go through our state. And that was a lot of the focus, because the focus was directed from and for, okay, hang on, no big mystery here, cars and trucks. Because the whole master plan of getting more people in cars and trucks and getting them on highways and getting to move them out into the urban areas and away from the cities was created to spur the economy, so to speak, and create the sprawl. And when you get the sprawl, you need to have more highways to feed into the places where all the business is, which is generally in the big cities. It's just created a huge mess. And everybody now has to have a car in order to operate, unless they choose to live in the cities or develop in a smarter way. And if you develop in a smarter way, you might just create a town that just relies on bicycles for transportation. Kind of a cool idea, isn't it? And build your infrastructure around cycling. They do this in Europe. There are places in Europe where this is done, and it's very successful. 70% of the people ride their bicycles. You know what else is really cool about that? Those same countries have the lowest problem with mental health and physical health. Huh. Who would have guessed that? The bicycle could actually save my life? Really? Don't I say that at the end of every show? I think I do. But anyway, the interstate system is just it's a catastrophe. And I know those who drive vehicles that are, propelled by gasoline engines probably think very differently about that sort of thing, but they really have caused more problems than they have done good. The vehicles emit lots of toxins into the atmosphere. All of these giant interstates, they tend to come into cities or circle around cities, and all of the fumes and all the terrible carbon products that are coming off of them are landing on neighborhoods as they go by, and asthma is on an increase. It's just horrible. It's just horrible. It's a bad idea. And sometimes, and this is a tough one because this is a hard thing for a lot of people to do, but sometimes you got to admit your mistake, cut your losses, and move on. And I think that's where we're at right now. We need to make positive changes. Positive changes will eventually help those kids that I was riding my bike with the other day. Those kids need us to help. And my feeling is that, those kids, if we can introduce them to cycling at a really young age and they fall in love with it, and they find that, and their parents are very encouraging of it. Obviously, we had a couple of parents on that ride too to help out. And they're going to see things from a much different light. Already, the younger generations are seeing things at a different light than what the folks that come from, I believe my group is known as baby boomers. That's kind of where, they have to categorize everything for some reason. I don't understand why. But anyway, they just see things in a very different way. And they're starting to see things from a direction of sustainability and health and fitness and, lifestyle. It's all kind of coming to a head here, and they're not wrong. I'm going to encourage every positive thought that comes out of those categories that are below us, the Gen X's and the Gen Y's and the Gen Z's and the millennials and all that, because they're our future, and they're not even our future. It's the little kids that I rode with on that ride yesterday. Those are the real future. And so get them, the sugar and food industry thought, what a great idea. Let's get them addicted to sugar and then put it in all the food and then advertise the food as fun. And now what do we have? Type 2 diabetes. Lovely, isn't it? They created a huge health problem and of course an addiction problem. Maybe the addiction should be like fitness and exercise and riding your bike. That's not a bad addiction, is it? I mean, if humans are actually prone to addiction, what better thing to become addicted to than something that's good for you? Just a thought. I'm always kind of going off on little tangents here, but what can I say? So, some agencies in the United States have not exactly embraced the evolution of making these changes. And even as the interstate system has grown to a gargantuan proportions that they can't afford to maintain, as emissions and road deaths and congestions have all skyrocketed under their watch, they're adding a little bit of capacity here and there, but there's not much more we can do to grow the highway system to meet the demands of an ever-growing country. So this is said by Chris McCahill, SSTI's managing director. So now state agencies are charged with providing access for people to get where they need to go by all modes: driving, transit, walking, biking. And that means different ways of designing and different ways of modeling what people need, and an entirely different skill set. So why can't we take all that money that we were using to develop all this huge interstate highway system and the amount of money that it requires to maintain that system, why can't we turn it around and make it more fair to other forms of transportation? That's basically how I feel. So fundamentally remaking how we do business, though, won't be easy for all state transportation offices, many of whom McHale says have updated their mission statements with lofty rhetoric about sustainability and equity without really changing the underlying process of what could actually get built and what doesn't. So the new presidential administration attempts to withdraw from federal discretionary grants for the very multimodal projects that would deliver the benefits to the communities and the communities that need it most. It's critical that the DOTs leverage their power as decision makers to fill that void, especially since Secretary Sean Duffy walked back on his plans to exert more control over their decisions, leaving them holding the reins. We talked about him last week, didn't we? The innovative DOT framework is about making sure that those big concepts translate into actionable steps that so that includes everything from how they spend their money and how they're picking projects and how they're designing projects to meet all those needs, and who they're bringing on to the team to make sure that they can do that. So, the DOT is kind of the answer here. Now, not to be critical, but I've been involved in bicycle projects for most of my life, and I have to tell you, this state's Department of Transportation, as we used to call it many, many, many years ago when I was on the Connecticut Bicycle Coalition, I was on the board of directors for those folks, we referred to them as the Department of Cars and Trucks. I have not seen much of a change there. And when you have a busy town that has a state road that goes through it, and you can't get the Department of Transportation to look at things in a positive light and how we could improve the amount of traffic that moves through town and reduce the amount of congestion that moves through town, we got a big problem here. So I don't see any of this, and I appreciate the article, and I appreciate Kia's viewpoint on this and her letting us know exactly, what is going on. But until we change the minds of the folks in charge of the departments of transportation, we're not going anywhere. I don't see it. So I know that we have a huge problem with that in our state. I've talked to other states and other bicycle advocates in states, and some of them are more progressive than others are. I think we should be much more progressive here in the state of Connecticut, but we're not. Who knows? Very, very, very sad as far as that goes. But, it happens when you make noise. And, I always promote that at the end of the show, because that's really the only way anything is going to get done, is if we go, I want this. I don't want that. And if I don't get this, and you can't provide it for me, I'm going to vote for somebody else that will provide it for me. Actions speak louder than words, folks. That's the way it all works. That's an old saying. It's been around for a long time. It's got a lot of meaning to it. So we have to encourage states to embrace congestion pricing and other transportation demand management strategies, because if we can't make the money from the federal government, then we have to figure out a way to make it from within. And the only way you can make it from within is starting to penalize people for using internal combustion engine vehicles, and taking those penalties and putting them into rebuilding your infrastructure so that it's not so hard for them to do. So, Pete says that the Connecticut DOT is much more receptive to trails. Look at the section they designed and built in Cheshire. Yeah, it's true. It's true. They definitely seem to be working on that. But, big thing there, the DOT is, we have a lot of trails out here in our end of the state too, Pete, and the DOT has absolutely nothing to do with them, because they handed off the rights to all the trails to DEEP, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, otherwise known as the park system. And the park system, which is severely underfunded in the state, they are now in charge of those trails, and that's the wrong direction, because it should have remained with the Department of Transportation, because people do use those trails for transportation. I went to an East Coast, oh God, what was it? It was a Northeast, maybe it was a Rails to Trails meeting. It was held at Eastern Connecticut State University a number of years ago. We had members of the Department of Transportation in that room, and also members of the of DEEP in that room. So we had both those people there, and I raised my hand to speak and introduced myself and said, so I'm under the impression that the Department of Transportation has handed over a lot of the Rails to Trails properties to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Is that true? And I got nods and agreements. And I said, I'd like to address both members here while I have the stage and ask you a couple of simple questions. If you are using that trail for commuting on because it's a safer alternative than riding your bicycle out on the busy roads and traffic, then shouldn't it be transportation and not environmental protection? And of course, things got quiet. And I said, and on top of that, shouldn't there be a system set up so that you can ride your bicycle on that trail 24/7 if you're using it for transportation? And I said, currently, and you can fact check me on this, but I said, currently, the Department of Environmental Protection and Energy and Protection will ticket you if you're riding your bicycle in the dark on those trails, because it's a state park and those are the state park rules. And that, to me, becomes a very, very confusing message. I think you guys need to talk. That's all I'm saying, is you need to talk. Because if I get a ticket riding my bicycle on a bike trail at night because I'm using it for transportation, I'm going to court with it, because it's not right and it shouldn't be done that way. It gives people who use their bicycles for transportation a great disadvantage if they can't use that trail at night in the dark. When is it the least safe to be on the road on your bicycle? At dark, at night, right? Okay, anyway, simple. Common sense always takes over here. And I'm not saying that I have a lot of it, but I have a little bit more than some people do. So anyway, we just really need to embrace a lot of things here. We need to evaluate our projects a little bit more. Put people before cars. Yeah, people before cars. Cars they're a method of transporting people. I completely understand. I own a car. I lease a car, but anyway, I have a car, and it's very useful for a lot of things. For getting out to the raceway the other morning, which is almost an hour drive from where I am, and I picked someone up and he commuted in with me. It's a useful piece of equipment, because I could not have ridden my bicycle there at the time of day that I was going there and get there on time to be part of the project that I was working on with this group. So yeah, a car has a useful place. There's no question about it. But if you can find ways locally of making it less useful, as far as penalties on parking and other various things, size of vehicle, please, size of vehicle, please. I think there really needs to be something done about the size of the vehicles. They're horrendously large, and they're really dangerous, and they're mostly dangerous and much more dangerous to vulnerable users like pedestrians and cyclists. So definitely have a problem there. We need to redesign. We need to figure this out. I'll stop banging on this drum right now. I'm going to move on. There's a lot more time I could spend on this, but I have other things I need to talk about in the show, including, as we progress forward, the bicycle racing calendar and what is going on out there. So last weekend was the Milan-San Remo, and just so you know, the Milan-San Remo, which is one of the monuments, the first big monument race, right, of the monuments. If any of you follow European bike racing, you know what I mean by monuments. There's some classics out there. Anyway, it's the first biggie, and it's 289 kilometers. For those of you who are in my world of what the heck is 289 kilometers, because we're not like the rest of the world that understands that distance, I'll put it to you in miles. That's 179.576 miles. Yikes! That's what it is. That's a lot of miles. That's a whole lot of miles to be racing your bike. And of course, it was, all there's a whole race review here. Let me see if I can find this on here. And it was, it started out with a lot of team attacks and, inevitable attacks at 25 kilometers out. Filippo Ganna from the Grenadiers was ready to react, but Matthew van der Poel also stuck it in like glue, and van der Poel was the guy to watch, apparently. There were a number of attacks. There was a trio of Pogačar and Van der Poel, and I can't find the third rider in here. I know it's in here, but anyway, they got together, and it came down to a sprint. Yeah, a sprint. Oh, it's Filippo Ganna and Tadej Pogačar and Matthew van der Poel. Remember how long I said this race was? 178 miles. That's a long ways. It's a long ways to race your bike and then have to have a sprint at the end. But the amazing Matthew Vanderpoel, who has more wattage than God, he was able to pull off the sprint at the end. It's a great sprint. You can see it on YouTube. It's kind of fun to watch. You can probably catch the last few minutes of the race or maybe some highlights from the race. Milan-San Remo is a classic and always will be a classic, but it was truly a, attacking, breakaway, reel them back in, experience, and it came down to the big three, and the unshakable Matthew Vanderpoel triumphs in a furious finale. And it was great to watch. Really, really fun. So Vanderpoel is there. He is winning yet another classic. That's what he wanted to do this year. He wanted to really focus on classics. Well, he just got a biggie right off the top. And I don't see anybody really touching him in certain situations. So anyway, that was cool. That was totally cool. There's lots more racing coming up. The UCI calendar is all packed with lots and lots and lots of races. So we're going to see more. The Ghent-Wevelgem in Flanders, that is coming up, I believe, next weekend. And then we get into April, and we're looking at the Door Vlaanderen, and that's another Flanders race, so you're going to see that. There's the Paris-Roubaix, which is coming up on the 13th of April. Paris-Roubaix is the classic of all classics. There's the Amstel Gold, which is coming up on the 20th of April. The Liège-Bastogne-Liège on the 27th of April. The Tour of Romandie, that is from the 29th of April on, so that's a multi-day straight. And of course, then we get to the Giro d'Italia, which is right around the corner. So there's lots of stuff going on. I'm going to save the report for the Giro until next week because there's just way too much to talk about there. I've got starting lists here. I've got the actual full course profile that I will tell you about next week. The Giro, if you've been listening to PedlinRon for any length of time whatsoever, is by far my favorite of all the big races. There are three major Grand Tours that we all know about fairly well because of the television coverage that we get now. But the Tour de France being the big one, the big, everybody watches the Tour. And when we had very, very hot American presence in the Tour, unfortunately not legal presence, but hot presence in the Tour. Yeah, it's a shout out to Mr. LA, excuse me. So yeah, we got a lot of coverage on that. So that was good for cycling. That was bad for cycling because the bad overtook the good eventually. Not a long story, but anyway, it is what it is. But the Tour de France, yeah, that's the big one. And it's the one that's watched the most around the world too. To give it credit, definitely give it credit. But can't discount the Tour of Italy or the Tour of Spain. The Vuelta a España and the Giro d'Italia are also great races and definitely worth paying attention to because you're going to see different riders emerge from that. You're going to see new riders that are young, that are getting lots of looks because of their performances. I think the Giro has some of the most challenging terrain there is, and it's also at a very challenging time of the year because you can see snow. It could be snowing on the top of one of the mountain passes. Sometimes they've had to divert the race because of that and make changes. Sometimes they've let them go over with not such great results because no one should be riding their bicycle in the snow. That's just not right. It's, I mean, if that's what you're supposed to be doing because it's a cross race, sure, that's fine. But a road race in the snow is just a recipe for disaster. It's not great. So I am not a big lover of that part of it, but I also do remember an American rider doing really, really well in a snowstorm going over a pass in the Giro, and it's all about bike handling and luck, I think, is what it is. But you just wouldn't want to have to slip out off your bike, off a perfectly good bicycle going down a descent in the snow. That just seems kind of crazy. But I have been caught personally in snow squalls while out training on my bicycle in the past, because I used to ride in some really challenging weather when I was training for bicycle racing back in the day. And you got to get out early, you got to get your miles in, and you got to get your legs going and get things moving. And but anyway, challenging weather can create challenging predicaments when you're out riding in it. And I'll tell you, if any of you who are in the snow belts, you know what a snow squall is. It is it's not a flurry of snow. It is a fury of snow. A lot of snow coming down in a really, really short window of time. So you can go from roads being completely dry to all of a sudden you're riding in 2 inches of snow on the road. And that's a little hairy. Now, they usually just blow through real quick and it's not that big a deal, but it's a big deal. You got to really kind of change how you're looking at things when those things come through. So they can be tough. They can be real tough to deal with. Anyway, there's lots more bicycle racing coming up. I'll talk more about that. The Natchaug Epic was wonderful. As I say, another shout out to Richard Fries and what he does for bicycle riding and promotion. Great guy. We've got a great crew. We have a lot of fun together. We work real hard to put on these events, but I think everyone ends up going away with a really, really good time, even if they were, dead to the world afterwards. I got a comment from my friend Diane on her Facebook page that said something about the stairs were a real challenge afterwards. And I understand that. I particularly understand that right now. So anyway, moving on to events, we got a few things coming up. 2025 Retailer Summit on the West is coming up on March 25th. That's just a few days away. Cabdo West is March 26th to the 27th in Las Vegas, Nevada. Taipei Cycle, the Taipei show is March 26th through 29th. I hope to have some good information on that next week. We'll see what happens. Sometimes there's some really cool stuff that comes through the Taipei show. So if I see something that really, floats my boat and I want to pass it on to you, I'll let you know. The U.S. Bicycle Market Forum is April 9th and 10th in Monterey, California. The Ride of Silence is back for 2025. Big shout out to Kevin Mahan. Saw him yesterday. He was volunteering and did a whole bunch of cool stuff for the gravel grinder yesterday. It was really, really, really cool to see him. And he was just so excited about the Ride of Silence. So we're going to keep pushing that. That is May 21st worldwide. And it's always the third Wednesday in May. And we will have ours in Mansfield here at 7 p.m. gathering at 6:50 for announcements at the Mansfield Community Center in the Mansfield Town Hall. That's 4 South Eagleville Road and 10 South Eagleville Road. And we keep everybody together. It's a rain or shine event, and it's a silent protest, basically, is what it is. Finishing points. This is a clip from my friends at the League of American Bicyclists. Bicycling is freedom. Life is better for everyone when more people ride bikes. The League is making biking an easier and safer option for more people, because when more people bike, people are happier and healthier, our communities are safer and friendlier, and our planet is greener. Together, we can help more people know the joy of bicycling. I'll say it again. It won't be my last time. Get loud, get active. Our time has come. Stop complaining about traffic, dangerous roads, the price of gas, and the lack of places to safely ride, and do your part. And hey, take the PedlinRon challenge. 1 day a week. Park that car or truck. Use your bike instead. You just might surprise yourself. The views expressed in this program do not reflect the views of the staff, management, or licensee of this station. You have been listening to PedlinRon at Bicycle Talk on WHUS. This is PedlinRon. Remember, you got to keep that rubber side down, the wind at your back. Get out and ride your bike. It really could save your life. Save mine. This is 91.7 FM, WHUS stores, and WHUS.org. Thanks for listening. See you next week.